I did a practice test. Oh, never mind.
No, go ahead.
No, never mind.
Oh, okay. All right. You can you can
I
ask
say
it
it out there.
over
Yeah.
the call, after the call. That's fine. That's fine. All right. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So we talked about local and remote logging before we took that break to talk about routing and switching. Now we're going to go ahead and jump on talking about, log settings and doing a log search within logs, right? Plenty of things you can do with that. Um, Hopefully after going through this section, this subsection, right, you should be able to go ahead and show your competency in log settings, enabling logging for the FortiGate and ensure that logs are generated on traffic caused by traffic passing through the firewall, aka forwarding traffic. Okay. All right. So the log settings, how do we get there? Right. If you're on your FortiGate, you go ahead and click on the log and report section in the uh, left side navigation bar of the FortiGate GUI, right? And then you'll be able to click on log settings, right? And so, as you guys seen before, whenever we were talking about this in the first subsection of logging and monitoring, is that you are able to go ahead and decide if you want to store your logs locally, right? If you want to store it on on a device, maybe a USB disk, or if you want to go ahead and store it remotely, right? For the analyzer, right? Now, that's just talking about where to put the logs. Where you guys also have to make a decision is to what logs you guys actually want to capture, right? And so, what do I mean by that, right? So, local logs, they provide information about traffic directly to and from the FortiGate, right? And I'm going to show you guys the difference in lab day tomorrow so you guys so it can make sense because forwarding traffic logs and local traffic logs, two totally different things. Okay. All right. Right. Event logs, right? Totally different as well, right? They provide all of the system information generated by the FortiGate, right? Such as maybe Mykevia being a FortiGate administrator, right? She logged in. That'll generate a log, right? Maybe she went ahead and made some configuration changes, right, on that FortiGate. That's going to generate a log, right? Maybe she has some end users, right? They did some things that will go ahead and generate a log, right? That classifies under user activity, right? Um, and just regular daily operations of the FortiGates being in productions, right? Things and things that don't fall under traffic passing through the FortiGate, right? Falls under event logs. Okay. Right. So maybe you'll see IPsec VPNs. I know you asked me about that before, Don, right? Um you'll see routing protocol. Maybe you guys have OSPF or BGP configured in your environment with your FortiGate to your ISP, right? Maybe you have that set up. You will see that all under these different type of logs, and you need to go ahead and configure in log settings what you want to capture. Okay. All right. Last but not least, right? If we're looking at these different screenshots, the key thing that I want you guys to take a look at, right? Because you guys seen the first top right? Remote logging and archiving went over that. We talked about local logs, right? To store logs locally and remotely. I want you guys to move your eyes down to the bottom of this screenshot, this PowerPoint, right? And one thing you want to go ahead and decide, as a network security engineer, if you want to do is if you want the FortiGate to utilize DNS to go ahead and resolve host names, right? Or resolve IP addresses, right? To host names, so you can go ahead and more effectively read your logs, right? Of course, this would require you to properly set up DNS and make sure that you have your FortiGate looking at the correct DNS server, right? And if you do that, it will have a huge impact on how you guys read your logs, maybe troubleshoot, maybe try to dig and find maybe there's an indicator of compromise. It'll help you guys out through and through whenever you guys trying to investigate. Has the network security engineer. Okay. Any questions? All right. Mikey, I'm sorry, you had something?
Oh, no, I was saying no. Sorry about that.
Okay, no, you're good. You're all right. All right. So we're still talking about log settings, right? Um, last but last but not least, right? We spoke a little bit about filtering logs, right? But it was, it was minuscule, right? While log settings, right, on the GUI allow you to configure what event logs and local traffic logs you capture, right? You can also get more in depth, right, about what you want to capture in the CLI, right? Remember the greatest rule that I told you guys within FortiOS or Fortinet, right? Some things you're able to do within the GUI and some things you're able to do in the CLI, right? And so we spoke about, right, as far as you have the option to set up at least 4 logging services, right? For syslog and FortiScene using the config log syslog d setting, as you guys can see right at the top, right? And you can also set up to all the way up to 4 Forti analyzers and Forti manager devices, right? Using the same command below that, okay? Right? But what you can do is add filters, right? And you can specify and say, maybe I want to go ahead and just capture, right, logs that have a sub level of X, Y, and Z. Maybe I want to only capture forward traffic. I don't want to capture local traffic. Maybe I want to just capture multicast traffic because maybe I want to see, OSPF messages that get sent, right, in multicast between different FortiGates, different routers, or what have you, right? Maybe I want to go ahead and capture a port, right? Capture traffic that a sniffer port I have set up, right? To go ahead and troubleshoot something. You can go ahead and be as granular as you want, right? Whenever you're setting up log filtering, okay? And those are the different options at the bottom, and you need to know that for the exam, okay? Any questions?
I do.
Okay,
So this is what you configured on a device locally, or you would do this like um in FortiManager or something? If
that is, nope, Don, that is an excellent question, right? So this is what you would configure on the FortiGate, okay?
okay.
Because what you're saying, right? You and Markiva would be saying is, I want to send logs to syslog server, right? Or FortiSIM logging server, or Forti Analyzer, Forti Manager, but Don is controlling what you want to send. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. No problem. Good question. All right. So after we go ahead and you guys go ahead and configure your logging, right? You set it up, it's ready for production, right? What you can also do, right, is now you can go to your individual firewall policies and say, I can also enable, right? I can enable logs to be generated if traffic matches one of my firewall policies, right? Now, where would that be, right? That would fall under your forward logs, right? Because those firewall policies, right? They target traffic that's ingressing the firewall and egressing the firewall, so passing through, right? So generally we want to go ahead and caption it, right? But you don't have to, right? Because the FortiGate by default is going to inspect traffic, right? We enable our UTMs, right? Our antivirus, our web filter, our IPS, our application control, right? It's going to do that, right? It's going to go ahead and process all of that. But, right, maybe, right, just maybe our connection to FortiGuard, right, is not updating our signatures that are in our antivirus UTM profile. It's not updating the signature within application control. And maybe a threat actor got through, right? And so now, right, the dynamic duo of Makivia and Don needs to go ahead and start doing some digging, right? But when you guys deployed this, you didn't go ahead and enable the the logging option of log allow traffic, right? And you didn't do for all sessions, what have you, of course, generate a log when it starts, right? And so what happens is you miss that excerpt of trying to being able to dig because you don't have that traffic being captured, right? So you don't have to do it, right? Because of course, whenever you say, hey, let's go ahead and enable logging, you guys see there's 2 options. One, you can go ahead and just enable logging for just security events, maybe signatures pop. Maybe somebody, a threat actor got caught by the firewall and the firewall blocked it, and you want to see where the indicator of compromise was going to be, right? So you can just set it to security events, right? But as we've all been learning about security, is that sometimes we don't know enough information about an attack before it happens. Sometimes that indicator of compromise is already in our network, right? So, of course, what I would recommend, of course, is to log allowed traffic and make sure you hit all sessions, right? All right. So we've done it multiple times before. I'll make sure I do it again tomorrow. But yeah, simply you create all your firewall policies. You go into your firewall policies. You go ahead and say, hey, at the end of you configure your if then statement, right, within your firewall policies, you enable your security profiles. Then you're going to go ahead and say, hey, log allowed traffic. You can enable it, right? And you have that 2 sections where it says if you want to just log security events, what will happen is, of course, security log events will appear, right? They'll appear in the forward traffic log, right? And they'll also appear in the security log. All right. The all sessions, right? If we enable that, it'll go ahead and generate a log for every session that starts within the firewall, right? But it's going to go ahead and show up in one, right? The forward traffic log, right? But if there's a security incident, right? Something is triggered via the signatures, it is going to show up in the security log. Okay. All right. Now,
Yep.
the big thing about this PowerPoint, right, that you guys see is that from a design standpoint, a deployment standpoint, is that a lot of our UTMs, right, they work well, right? Fortinet, our FortiGate works very well because they have dedicated chips, right? NP6, right, NP7 or what have you, that does the processing of, comparing, looking at the packet, comparing it to signatures and seeing, hey, do I have, maybe malware? Do I have threats passing my firewall or I don't, right? And one thing you have to keep in mind is that, do I have hardware acceleration enabled on my firewall? We talked about it early, right? We talked about it early, roughly in section 1 and section 3, whenever we were talking about creating firewall policies. So you have to keep that in mind, right? Because if we go ahead and enable hardware acceleration, it may affect logging, right? And I've seen it firsthand, right? Some logs, they'll be captured, right? But they'll be empty. And that's very scary if you get put on the spot to try to go ahead and do some digging. Okay. All right. So just keep that in mind for the exam.
Now, how do you I had a question.
Sure.
The hardware acceleration,
Mhm.
where do you enable that at? Is that in the policy?
Good
I don't
question.
think I've seen that before.
So that'll be in the CLI.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
That will be in the CLI. And I know it's been a long time, but that's where we were talking about configuring the firewall policies and telling it to do a specific thing as far in regards to the UTM.
I think I remember. Okay, I gotta go back and I remember us now that you say that. Okay.
Okay. All right. So, of course, with capturing logs, capturing the traffic, or what have you, right? Fortinet, right? Long time coming. They also enable the ability to go ahead and hide usernames within logs, right? Certain environments that you work in, right? They have to follow some laws, right? And some laws require that usernames be anonymized, right? And of course, real simple, you can go ahead and use this command to go ahead anonymize usernames within those logs, right? You go to config log settings, set user anonymize, and you hit enable. And what you'll see, right, if you guys see the log excerpt down there, right, you see the parse and you'll see that user, right, it'll have a value of anonymous, right? It won't even pop up, right? You'll have the IP address, you'll have, hey, it's part of a certain LDAP group or what have you, but we still don't see the username. So all good, right? This is an option that you're able to do whenever you're configuring logging, okay? All right, here's another screenshot, right? And I think you guys have seen this more times than none. This is how you're able to go ahead and view log message within the GUI, right? If we're trying to target traffic that is passing through the FortiGate, we go ahead and click on forward traffic, right? And as you guys can see, we can go ahead and set filters at the top, right? Top of the log view, right? We can go ahead and narrow it down, right? If you guys see to the right and it's kind of muddled, I apologize about that, right? But we can select the log location, right? So let's say right? Let's say my Kivia set up this firewall, right? But she also has a security fabric, right? Security fabric encompassing a FortiAnalyzer, right? And two FortiGates, right? And she can go ahead and look at maybe the FortiAnalyzer logs, or she can look at the logs that are captured in memory, right? What's the difference, right? Quick review, right? Maybe she has the setting using the default setting of those logs being uploaded to FortiAnalyzer, maybe every 30 seconds, maybe every 300 seconds, or what have you. If she goes to memory, she'll see the instant logs, right? So, also with the feature of just, clicking on FortiAnalyzer, she can go through hundreds of logs while still logging to the FortiGate. Plenty of options you have whenever you're selecting the log location, okay, within the log and report feature, right? Like I told you guys before, if you're looking at the left-hand navigation bar, right, there's plenty of different log sections. So we have forward traffic, we have local traffic, we have sniffer traffic, we have system events, we have router events, we have plenty of different logs to as granular as we want to be, right? We can look at specific logs for that. Okay. And of course, for each log within the log messages view, we can click on one individual one and it'll show us the details on the right-hand screen. It'll pop out, show us the source, destination, maybe the UTM that captured it, right? Or if any UTMs captured it, if it triggered anything, right? The time, the date, or what have you, everything that we would need to know as network security engineers to go ahead and start parsing this information for ourselves. Okay? Any questions? All right, let's keep going. So for my peoples, right, that are not familiar with, using filters or maybe new to it, right? Maybe you've played around with Wireshark, but don't really know some of those PCAP commands or what have you. I like to recommend using Fortigate, right? Using their GUI has a way to go ahead and learn how to use filters, how to parse through logs and what have you, right? Because of course, right, capturing logs, it comes in at a high value, right? If and you guys being network security engineers, you're going to have to be the ones that go ahead and be able to sift through and find what you need, right? And the goal here is, right, maybe you get tasked with the ask of, hey, can you tell me what happened whenever the network went down, right? Maybe on certain days. You have to be the engineer that says, I can do this, but how can I do this, right? I'm going to need some information, right? And the information that you're going to need, and if you're following me on the right-hand side of this PowerPoint, you're going to need some information to go ahead and help you drill down, right, what the ask is. Maybe you need the date and time, right? Maybe you need to go ahead and say, hey, whose computer stopped working, right? Let me go ahead and track it like that, right? Where's my source? What's my destination? Was it Google that was not working, right? Was it NTP servers that were not working, right? You can add a filter, right, within this view to go ahead and drill down your logs, right? Because there are hundreds and thousands of logs that's traversing your firewall at milliseconds. There's no way you'll be able to keep in track of them. So you have to make sure you use that filter, right? It's a sword in a sense to help you sift through all of what you have available to you to go ahead and find what you need. Okay. Of course, Fortinet gives you that option. It has a quick view, right? You can go ahead and click on add filter. You can say, maybe I'm searching for denied traffic. You click on action, click on deny. Maybe I'm looking for a certain date, right? I'm looking for December 25th. You can click on December 25th and enter that information and look at all the logs for that day, right? And the same thing you do on the FortiGate, you can do on FortiAnalyzer, right? FortiAnalyzer is just a little bit more granular. But this is how the filter options look like, okay? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay,
I do have a question though. I'm wondering if it's filtering that caused it.
sure.
First, I guess for the Fort logs, it should show you like web traffic included in there, right? Like that's something that should be included in there, correct?
You said web traffic?
Yeah, like what the traffic that a PC is visiting. The reason I asked,
Mhm.
today I had a case that
Hold
I
on.
couldn't find it in the forward traffic, but I found it in the web traffic, like the web filtering.
Okay.
Um, and I couldn't realize, like I couldn't pinpoint on why it wasn't showing up in the forward traffic. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming that it was possibly filters, but it was just the IP address that I was using as a filter, the
hmm
source.
hmm
Um, so I was wondering if was filtering the reason that I would not see it in forward traffic, but I'm seeing it in the web filtering traffic, like the
That's a
web filtering log.
that's a possibility, right?
Uh-huh.
So my favorite quote, right? Since I'm a huge nerd, right? With great power comes great responsibility, right?
Uh-huh.
You can find the same thing, right, in thousands of ways, right? In any vendor, any device, especially within the FortiGate. But if we go back to earlier what we said, right? Of course, if you have the option on your firewall policies that says um, generate a log for all sessions, right? Is going to capture the session, right? But it's also going to put, right, logs or traffic that trigger a UTM to go ahead and provide an action on it. It's going to set that within the security log section. Okay.
Okay.
If we are in firewall policies as well, right, and we select security events to only generate logs, you're only going to see for
Mm,
triggers. For
okay, okay,
triggers,
okay.
whenever it is, because again, the that dedicated chip on the firewall is going to inspect that traffic and say, hey, you triggered right one of my UTMs. That UTM being web filter, antivirus, DNS filter, um, um, whatever, right? It's going to look at that, and if the trigger happens, right? If the trigger happens, it triggers a signature that's noted within that UTM profile has bad. It's going to put that in the security log, and
Mm,
it's gonna tell Don, hey Don, I blocked this traffic, right? Because going to Google.net is pretty weird and it doesn't exist. It's
got you.
supposed to be Google.com. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does. It
Okay.
does. Hmm. Okay, thank you.
No, no problem. All right. So last but not least, right? Um, quick and easy, dirty way to go ahead and we'll look at it tomorrow. Maybe you guys need to go ahead and take a look at traffic, right? And this starts before your investigation. Maybe you look at traffic northbound, right, within your network. So traffic coming inside, well, starting on the inside and going out. You can go ahead and start at your firewall policies section, right click it, and just say show matching logs, right? And so what the FortiGate will do, it'll go ahead and once you click on show matching logs, it it'll take you to the log section and it'll go ahead and show you all the logs that match, right, the firewall policy or how I like to call it the if then statement that you programmed, right? And it's going to show all the logs that match it, right? Based on the policy ID, right? The unique ID of that policy within the FortiGate kernel, right? Because we don't see the UUID every day if we're on the GUI. You would have to see the UUID if you're actually in the CLI, okay? But, right, those developers that went ahead and created Fortinet, they made it to where if you go ahead and click on show matching logs, it knows to go ahead and go to forward traffic logs and match this UUID and just show me all the logs. Okay. So quick and easy and dirty way to go ahead and do some more research. Okay. Of course, my favorite thing in the world, the CLI. You guys can also look at these logs on the CLI. Okay. You can go ahead and type in this command, right? It'll go ahead and let you know, of course, what you see. It'll drop all the logs that you want to see, right? You can either use execute log filter, right? What it does, of course, it configures what log messages you will see, how many logs you can view at one time. Of course, by default, it's a maximum of 1,000, and the type of log messages you can view, right? So my Kiwi can go here and say, I want to look at logs that were denied, right, based on critical severities, right, based on our UTM profile. She can type it in, she'll see all of that, right, and she'll drill down, and maybe she'll put on December 25th. She'll drill down and she'll see all of that within the CLI, right? And of course, she'll the FortiGate will go ahead and parse it for her, but she'll need to, of course, with her human eyes, parse it herself, right? Execute log display. If you don't care about filtering, you can go ahead and just see all, right? All the logs and specify it, right? As much as you want. But again, these commands are for the more so advanced, right? Network security engineers. But I implore you guys, go ahead, play with it. At least know what it looks like, know how to, go ahead and enable it. So you guys have that familiarity with it. And you will be asked about this on the exam. So definitely give it some practice on your home FortiGate. Okay. Any questions? Now, before I jump off the screen, one big thing that I want you guys to understand about this, right? We've talked about creating a security fabric, right? We talked about remote logging. If you guys enable remote logging, okay, maybe a syslog, a remote syslog server, or your SIEM server, you will not be able to look at these logs on the CLI. You would have to go over there, right? So maybe you have the Splunk server, right, set up. All your logs, you've told the FortiGate to send it to Splunk. You're not going to be able to see it. So you're going to have to go ahead and let Splunk parse it and look at it there. Okay, does that make sense?
So just to confirm, if I have it configured to go anywhere else, I won't be able to see it in the CLI locally still?
Ask your question again.
Just to confirm, if I have it configured to go like anywhere else, like a Splunk server, I wouldn't be able to see it locally.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So, and again, I want to make sure I make it clear. Your syslog or a SIEM server, right? For the analyzer, it's fine. Even though it's remote, you'll still be able to see it within the CLI.
Okay.
This only relates to syslog servers and SIEM servers. Okay, you will not be able to look at those log messages within the CLI. Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right. So we're engineers, right? We're human beings, right? We are not able, right, to physically watch the logs all day, every day. We just can't, right? We need breaks, right? But security events happen, right? 365, 24/7, right? How can we as network security engineers, how can we go ahead and still monitor events happening on our firewalls without being physically there, right? You have the option to go ahead and configure an alert email, right, to go ahead and send you events notifying all the administrators that have access to the firewalls and that are administrating the firewalls, right? Of course, right? Either you, and of course, you work with maybe your Exchange team, your Office 365 teams, your experts that are familiar with mail service, right? You would need their help first, because of course, you need to go ahead and configure the SMTP server, right? Configure that on your FortiGate. Them giving you an IP, an address that would have you make sure FortiGuard is sent up. Then, right, you go ahead and say, hey, where to send these alerts to, right? Maybe you'll send it to you, maybe you'll send it to a mail list or what have you. And it's real simple. You'll tell it, hey, what logs I want to go ahead and send. If I want to send IPS logs, antivirus, right, and all the UTMs, right? Maybe give me, certain warnings. You can be as granular as possible on how you want to configure your alert email setting. Okay. So play with this command, right? You can do a little bit of things in the GUI, but I typically like to go ahead and I have more success of doing it within the CLI as far as my real world experience. So definitely know how to do this within the CLI. And just play with the different trigger alert emails options if you have the ability to go ahead and, you know, give it an IP address out to the world and see how it sets up. Okay. All right. So my most favorite and currently challenging thing in the world right now, Fortinet, is configuring the threat weight. So in order to prioritize solving the most relevant issues easily, right? Us as engineers, we can go ahead and configure those severity levels, right, for different UTMs, right? And we can give it a score, or what the Fortinet calls a threat weight, right? And so we come here, we go to log and report, we go to the threat weight section, right? What we can do, we can go ahead and give it a risk value, right? That's what you guys see at the middle of this. You can see in the middle of this PowerPoint, right? And we can tell it to give it a value of either low, medium, high, or critical, right? We're giving it different SEV levels, right? Based on a certain category, right? And each of these levels, right, they include a certain threat weight, right, as you guys can see, right? By default, right, low equals to 5, medium equals to 10, high equals to 30, okay, and critical equals to 50, right? Don, being the network security engineer, right, he can adjust these threat weights, right, per his organizational requirements, right? And what you can do is once you go ahead and configure it, you go back to security section, right? You go to the dashboard, go to your security section. You'll start to see and say, the logs that are being seen by my FortiGate, right? What is the score that now that I configure my threat weights, that I'm giving it to where what's a priority and what's not a priority? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. It took me almost roughly 3 weeks to try to understand this again. But
I
it's
think it's how you explained it to us that why it made sense.
yeah. but seriously, within the exam, you will barely be asked about threat weights, because it's even though it's of course still the NSE4, it's a advanced topic, right, that you can go down a rabbit hole with. If I were you guys, I would definitely lean on, if you guys are getting, learning about threat weights and trying to implement it within your environment, I would definitely work with a security architect, somebody that's well versed in cybersecurity, before, playing and manipulating this within your environment, because it could have critical effects to how logs are captured, how logs are prioritized. Okay. All right. And, you know, the big thing here is, I don't want you guys to panic. You configuring the threat weight is not going to have any effect on if the UTM profiles, right, that are configured, what action they take on traffic that's passing through. This is mostly just for logs. Okay. It's not gonna, if you guys manipulate the threat weight, what's not gonna happen is the FortiGate is gonna see traffic passing through and say, oh, Don configured this new CVE that just came out, right, to be have a risk value of low. So let's go ahead and let it within our environment. It is not going to do that. This is just according to logs. Okay. All right.
Yep.
So my favorite thing to do, right, whenever we finish a subsection, is of course I like to ask you guys questions. So question number one. Right. So there's one answer, right? I'm going to give you two answers and I'm going to read out the question for you. All right. So question one, in your firewall policy, which setting must you enable to generate logs on traffic sent through that firewall policy? Is it A, log allow traffic, or is it B, event logging?
Allow traffic?
Say it again.
Allow traffic? Wait, say the question again?
You want me to read the question for you again?
Yeah.
Sure. So in your firewall policy, which setting must you enable to generate logs on traffic sent through that firewall policy? Is it
Allow.
A, log allow traffic, or is it B, event logging?
Log
Gonna go with
allow.
A.
Log allow?
Yeah.
All right, that's correct. All right, question 2. With email alerts, you can trigger alert emails based on blank or severity level, right? A, event, or B, threat weight.
Is it B threat
Event.
weight? Whoa. Yikes.
I don't
You
think
able to
the
read?
threat weight.
Oh, wait,
Able-
can you repeat that again once more time, please?
Yeah, sure. All right, so here's the question. With email alerts, you can trigger alert emails based on blank or log severity level. Is it A, event, or is it B, threat weight?
I'm just gonna say A.
Sorry. It's event. Sorry, I had to rehear that.
It's event, or
I'm gonna, because
is
I
it
don't think
threat weight?
I think you just said the threat weight doesn't like doesn't allow traffic. It just said it'll still like, I don't know. I'm gonna go with A.
You're gonna go with A?
Yeah.
All right. So you guys were correct. You guys are correct on A. Definitely on your own time, I want you to read up more about threat weight, okay?
Mhm.
All right. So what we'll do, because it looks like we're 40 past the hour, we'll go ahead and I was going to try to go ahead and finish the protect log data, but we'll do that tomorrow before we start the lab day, because it's a pretty short section. And then we'll start with the lab, and then you guys will be done with the logging monitoring section, right? And once you guys finish that, we'll go over SSL VPN, and you guys will be done with the security study guide. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
All right. And now just remember, guys, we didn't go over chapters 7 through 11, right? Because I wanted you guys to read for yourself about those ETMs. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any questions, guys?
Nope, none for me.
All right, guys. Well, you guys have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Great. Thanks, guys. Take care. All right. Bye.